With March Madness coming up, I wanted to talk about some profiles for NBA hopefuls. And people have talked ad nauseum about Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey and Cooper Flagg. I want to focus on players who might not get that shine. And the first player I want to talk about is Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma. Now, Jeremiah has been deemed as the Trae Young incarnate, and I don't think that we should go that far, but he is a very good player. Oklahoma has not done well in conference play, but I don't think it's indicative of who Jeremiah is as a player. I just think that that's what the SEC is now. Jeremiah is averaging 16, 4, and 4 on the year, and that 43% doesn't look great, but it is pretty great considering he's shooting 27% from 3. He's also averaging about a steal and a half a game. I don't think that he's necessarily a great defender, but I do think he plays the passing lanes well. Jeremiah is probably going to be the end of the lottery, or at worst case scenario, the end of the first round pick, and I think that a team who needs some reasonable point guard play could really use him. My ideal candidate, if they're not going to go out and get a shooter, is the Orlando Magic, because teaming him up with Paolo Franz and Jalen Suggs could be a problem for the rest of the league. Does your team need reliable backup point guard play? If you do, I've got the guy for you. Now, some of you know I'm a WVU fan, so I am allowing myself 2 homer picks. This is the first one. And Javon Small is a guy to look out for at the end of the first round, maybe early in the second round. Now, he's a 4-year guy, so he's going to be a little bit older than the rest of his field, but I don't think that should deter other teams from taking someone as good as Javon Small. 18, 4, and 5 on 42, 36, 87 shooting splits with about a steal and a half a game is really good for what he's being asked to do for that team. Coming into this year, after transferring from Oklahoma State, he was going to be asked to be second fiddle to Tucker DeVries, but after his injury, he's been the guy for the West Virginia Mountaineers. Now, the only real downside that I have as a fan of WVU is that sometimes Javon forgets that he's the guy. Sometimes you'll see his box score stats and he shoots 9 times in a game when he's being asked to be the leader of that team. But other than that, he can do everything else on the basketball floor, play defense, and be a great pickup for your team. We have NBA hopefuls to talk about, and this time we're heading overseas. There are higher-ranked prospects like Nolan Traore, but I think that Hugo Gonzalez could really be a valuable pickup for someone at the end of the first round. Now, unfortunately, his main club, Real Madrid, does not give him a lot of burn in the EuroLeague, so we can only go off a game tape, and I'm going to try my best to not use every cliche in the book. He just has really good game feel. He's not going to be this superstar type, but I think he could be really valuable to your team. He is not a great shooter, but his mechanics look very good, so I think he can improve there. And I definitely wouldn't say that he is a consistently great defender, but he's a very crafty defender. He's generally in good position to block your shot from behind, to get back taps on steals. He's very crafty. He plays really well off the ball too. I see a scenario where he gets decent minutes on a team and just gets 6 points a game off of back cuts. But I think one of his best qualities is his first step. He's so very twitchy and so fast he will beat people to the rim. His absolute ceiling is probably Franz Wagner and his floor is probably Bogdan Bogdanovic. Backup point guards are becoming some of the most important positions in all the NBA, and I think that Marquette has a really good one. Over the last couple of months, I've kind of snuck my way into the Marquette fandom, and it is largely in part due to Cam Jones. Cam Jones is kind of the epitome of what you want in a college athlete. As a 4-year guy, so I know he's going to get looked over, but he seems really solid. 18, 4, and 6 with 50% from the floor, a steal and a half at a game. The only real weakness that he has on the offensive end is his 3-point shooting, which he is having a down year for that, but on his career, he's shooting 37%. Sometimes I think you just need a steady hand as a backup, and that's what Cam Jones can give you. Someone reliable enough to get his own shot if needed, and more importantly, get everybody else involved. I think Cam's got the ability to essentially be a career backup, be super reliable, always be in a league, and if needed, step into that starting role whenever your starter's out. The highest I've seen him on draft boards is the end of the first round. I don't think he'll go that high, but maybe the middle of the second round if I had to guess. He's a good pickup. Do you like French point guards? Nous les avons. Nolan Traore is the new French prospect that everybody's talking about, and I gotta be honest, for a long time, I was pretty Frenched out. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama and Bilal Coulibaly look really good, but everything else has kind of been shaky at best. But he seems like the real deal. His counting stats are not fantastic, but the counting stats for international players almost never are. When you watch his gameplay, though, it's pretty interesting. He plays at 2 speeds, fast as fuck or Andre Miller. When he plays at Andre Miller speed, he does what he's expected to do. He gets people involved, he picks his spots, and he's very methodical. One of his best qualities when he's playing fast as fuck is that he is never, ever out of control. Now, as it currently stands, he does not appear to have a jump shot. His mechanics look fine. I think that he could eventually get one down the line, but it's not his strength right now. He is, however, a great downhill attacker. He might not be a top 5 pick, but he might be a top 5 performer in this year's draft. To me, he's like the French Ricky Rubio, and coming from me, that's a pretty high honor. Does your team need bench scoring? I've got a guy. because Keyshawn Hall can light it up with the best of them. Keyshawn's really finding his own in this college basketball landscape after transferring from UNLV and then George Mason, but he's averaging 19, 7, and 2 on 43, 37, 80 shooting splits. There are some disclaimers with every player. He does not play a ton of defense, and his scoring and shooting is a little bit streaky. I definitely don't think that he'll ever be a high usage guy. I don't think that he'll ever be in a position where he's averaging like 25 a game. But if you need some scoring punch, I think he's a good pickup. He's a really good rebounder for his position. He's gone for 20 or more 14 different times this season. I think it'll take a while for him to ever reach these kind of heights, but I see him being used like they used Malik Beasley in Detroit, someone who was asked to be that scoring punch off the bench. If I had to guess, he's probably a second-round guy. He'll probably spend a lot of time in the G League, but I think eventually he will be a very good basketball player in the NBA. Do you like Dalton Knecht and his story? Well, you might like this guy too. Remember how I said I was allowed 2 homer picks? This is my other one, because I think Tucker DeVries could be a real deal and a real valuable piece to a certain team. We didn't get to see a lot of Tucker because of his injury, but believe me, as a WVU fan, this guy was a problem. 15, 5, and 3, 47% from 3, with 2 steals and a block and a half a game. Listen, I would love to see him pretend like he could be the sneaky number 1 pick and he has all this upside. He isn't going to be that kind of guy. But if you need real good value in the middle of the second round or at the end of the second, I think he's your guy. Because again, prior to his injury, he was destined to be the number 1 guy for WVU, and he very well may have led the nation in scoring. So I think a real contender could use his services, and let's be honest, who doesn't need more white guys who can shoot the ball? You ever wonder what it would be like if Alperen Sengun and Lauri Markkanen fused as a basketball player? Well, we might have one in Danny Wolf. Now, I am aware that is a very lofty expectation. I wanted to mention that because that's how he was described to me one of the first times I became aware of him. His counting stats do look fine. His play style is really interesting, especially the way the NBA is starting to develop, but he does have his flaws. Because Danny, as it stands right now, not a great three-point shooter, about 33%. Also, not great from the line, and he has a bit of a turnover problem. But I do think that a lot of that is just trying to figure out who you are as a number 1 guy for that Michigan team. Now, I don't think you need to reach for this kind of player. If you have the 22nd pick, you could probably snag him at that point. But if you have the 7th pick, you probably don't need to go for it. However, if a team in that scenario was going to go for it, I would like for it to be the Bulls because I want to see what him and Matas can do. And who knows, if you take a swing on him, maybe you get the next Alp. One of the things in the NBA that you can never run out of is bench scoring. Marquette's got a good one in Chase Ross. I became aware of Chase when I started watching Marquette for Cam Jones, but Chase is really interesting to me because I don't think that he'll ever be a superstar. I don't even think he'll be like a Klay Thompson, like third fiddle kind of guy, but I do think he could be a really consistent bench production piece. His counting stats aren't amazing. I'm not going to pretend like they are, but I do think that he could give some value to a team at the end of the draft. Decent efficiency, plays really good defense, averages about 2 steals a game, and every single year of his career, his 3-point percentage has gotten better. Is that just a trend? Is it a coincidence? I don't think so. I think this is something real. So the more time he has on the basketball floor, the better of a 3-point shooter he's going to be. With the NBA the way it is, you could never run out of 3-and-D guys. I do think that if Chase gets drafted, he'll spend the majority of his time in the G League, but eventually there will be a team that needs that kind of production, and they will call his number. It's pretty early, but we may have a reincarnation of Zebo. Derek Queen just gives me a real throwback vibe, like a real bully ball type of play. 16, 9, and a block and a steal in a game. He's doing everything out there. Not to mention 53% from the field. Just don't ask about his 3-point percentage. If I were to describe Derek in one word, it would be strong. He is straight up bullying people out there. And maybe it's because he's playing kids that are going to be accountants next year, but I don't see his strength changing when he gets to the NBA. I said don't ask about his 3-point percentage because it is abysmal, but his mechanics are very good, so maybe he's never like a 40% guy from 3, but I think he can develop a jump shot eventually. The things that I like about him the most are his ability to play in today's kind of game. In college ball, yeah, you can bully people, but in the NBA, you're going to have to be really good in the short roll, and that's exactly what he is. Not to mention, too, he's deceptively fast. Once he catches the ball, it's going to be pretty hard to stop him going downhill. If you like Zebo back in the day, and you like Julius Randle now, you're going to love Derek Queen. If there's only one thing that I trust in this world, it is a John Calipari coached guard. And Coach Cal did it again with Boogie Fland. Now, Boogie missed some time this year with an injury, but what I got to see from him this year, I was impressed with. 15-6 with a steal and a half a game on, albeit not great efficiency from the floor, but he is shooting 37% from 3. You get to see him play in March Madness, or whenever he gets to the NBA, I think you'll see a couple things that pop off the page immediately with his play style. One of the first things you may notice about him, he's very shifty. He has the ability to change direction and stop on a dime. That's a very valuable skill set in the NBA, especially for a guard. He's also the very definition of a pick and roll maestro. He can get people in hell in any situation reading that pick and roll. He's not a great individual defender. He's not like a Kawhi Leonard or a Jalen Suggs or anything like that, but he's a great lane defender, and he will get a couple steals a game just reading the passing lanes. As we said before, he's not a great shooter, but he's got good mechanics, so I think that'll buff out. It's going to be really hard to reach these heights, but he's giving me shades of SGA and Steph Castle. Texas Tech has a really interesting player in JT Toppin. 18, 9, 2.5 stocks a game, 55% from the floor is really good, but he's not your prototypical NBA prospect. I want to focus on the positives first. He has fantastic footwork in the post. Absolutely incredible. And on top of that, he is a great release valve for that Texas Tech offense. I don't think that he'll ever be a guy that is initiating offense. I don't think that he'll ever be a guy that averages like 25 a night in the NBA, but I think he could be a really good glue guy for whatever team picks him up. The only reason I say that he won't be that kind of guy is that he's kind of a throwback player. He kind of reminds me a lot of Derek Favors back in the day. He just has a very dated, a very antiquated game, but I mean that as respectfully as possible. Because undeniably, he is fun to watch. I just think that he's going to have to change his game tremendously to be in like a 8-man rotation on a good team. And at bare minimum, he's going to be really fun to watch in the tournament this year. Creighton might not make it to the Sweet 16 this year, but they do have an NBA prospect on their hands. Brian Kalkbrenner made some noise earlier this year when he scored 49 on like 92% from the field, so he has the ability to put up big numbers if he has a matchup advantage. Counting stats look good. 29, almost 3 blocks a game, 65% from the floor. I do think he's going to have some challenges going to the NBA. Fortunately for him, we've seen it done this year. Zach Edey, being the dominant force that he was at Purdue, faced the exact same issues that he's going to have to face coming into the NBA this year. He certainly wasn't as dominant as Zach Edey was at Purdue, but all of the important pieces are there. Brian Kalkbrenner is now a 4-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year, and the only other person to do that is Patrick Ewing. If he does have an advantage when compared to Zach Edey, I think that it's slightly more mobile and slightly more agile than he was, but he is going to have to make a big leap. And being able to stretch the floor is super valuable, but if Zach Edey can do it, I think Ryan can too. May never be a superstar, but I think he'll be good for your center depth. If Georgia's going to make any noise in the NCAA tournament, it's going to be in large part due to Asa Newell. 15-7 with a block and a steal a game, 54% from the floor. I think he can do a lot on the basketball floor. Now, he is not a great three-point shooter, but in the NBA, I don't think he's going to be asked to do that. He plays very aggressively. I don't know what other word I could possibly use to describe him, but I do like his play style. I think he's going to be an effective rebounder in the NBA. I think he is great around the rim and in the dunker spot. He's the quintessential hustle guy on your team. Listen, with the way the league is going, where there are more big ball handlers, where you want a kind of a two big lineup like a Jokic and an Aaron Gordon, you're going to need players like him. And is he going to be a superstar in the NBA? No, probably not, but I think he's going to be a valuable role player to any team that snaps him up. If I were to give him a comp, just based off of everything that I've seen so far, it would be a less athletic Aaron Gordon. When you get into the second round of the NBA draft, you're really looking for glue guys and good rotation pieces, and I think UConn has one. Alex Karaban has been the heart and soul of this UConn team over the last 3 years, and I think he can bring that kind of value to an NBA team. Because Alex has always played with NBA lottery pick type of players, I think he knows his role and he never tries to do too much. The counting stats look good for what you want in a role player, and he's shooting 36% from 3, which does need work, but it is respectable. From the UConn games I've been able to catch this year, there are a lot of qualities about him that scream great role player in the NBA. He is absolutely ready to shoot the basketball. He never second guesses, he never overthinks himself. When he's open, he shoots it. And again, because of all the talent that he's played with at UConn so far, he is a very willing passer. He's actually pretty good at transition defense as well, being able to break up fast breaks. Above all else, in the half-court set, he tries on defense. And again, you can't teach hustle. The absolute definition of a glue guy. He'll never be an all-star, but your team needs players like that. With Cooper Flagg potentially being out for the first round of the NCAA tournament, someone else is going to have to step up. And Con Knipple is going to be that guy. Counting stats are good. 14, 4, 3, 47% from the field, 40 from 3, and 90 from the line with the steal a game. When he was playing alongside Cooper, he was the quintessential white Duke player. Catch and shoot, light it up from 3. He did it all. When Cooper Flag is not on the floor or he has the show for himself, he plays in a different way, which could be a benefit for an NBA team. Once he gets hot from three, he is not afraid to attack the middle. He understands the gravity that he causes, and he can use that to his advantage. And despite the fact that he's a white player from Duke, he loves to get his team involved. He loves to be able to sling the rock. His best quality to me outside of his three-point shooting is his never say die attitude on defense. He may not be a great defender, but he always tries, and it's really hard to teach hustle. Once he's in the NBA, he's probably going to be asked to simplify his game, and if he does that, you're looking at another Grayson Allen.